Tonight, how much can we believe about the enemies of the United States? In Angola 10 years ago and in Nicaragua today,
is showing no signs of dying down and is now being felt far beyond its borders.
We're the most technologically advanced country in the world. So slowly but surely we've been trying to take back the airwaves.
Tonight, two former CIA officers tell reporter Christopher Hurd how lies invented about Angola and Nicaragua found their way into the world's press.
Pro-democracy rebels say they are now in control of the oil port and they're heading west. A convoy of vehicles is pushing along the coast to Al-Qaila, the next town still under pro-Gaddafi control.
And then go to the most extreme where you've got a set of global networks that Al Jazeera has been the leader in that are literally changing people's minds and attitudes.
So any kind of story that you could write and get into the media anywhere that pushed that line, you did. 1/3 of my staff in this task force was covert action, was propagandists whose professional career jobs was making up stories and finding ways to get them into the
But before the CIA could start a war on the other side of the world, it needed the approval of the National Security Council, a key part of the American decision-making machine, where policy is made by the top men in the government.
Questioning the State Department's $47 billion budget request for next year. And as RT's Ghani Chichikian reports, the US Secretary of State says Washington needs to step up its propaganda efforts.
Very blunt in my assessment. Al Jazeera is winning. The Chinese have opened up a global English language and multi-language television network. The Russians have opened up an English language network. I've seen it in a few countries, and it's quite instructive.
Mrs. Clinton says she's leading an effort to spread U.S. propaganda through new media, with Twitter feeds in Arabic and Farsi. But on global stage, the U.S. trailed when it comes to television.
We went on with a chart to explain there are 3 liberation movements, and one of them is headed by Holden Roberto. He's the good guy. We've worked with him for years, and they use literally good guy. Then the MPLA is headed by this drunken, psychotic Marxist poet, Agostinho Neto. He's the bad guy. And they used exactly so to make sure that people understood.
Oil production facilities will see that 80% of the oil-producing territories right now are under rebel control. Now, Europe takes over 85% of Libya's crude exports. More than 30% of Libyan oil goes to
subcommittee meetings of the National Security Council in which we were making decisions on getting people killed.
You know, Al-Qaeda is very strong in Libya. Actually, Libyan department of Al-Qaeda is one of the strongest in the world. Maybe the second strongest after the Pakistani one. One of the greatest dangers now is that Al-Qaeda and other jihadist networks try to get use of that situation.
Interestingly, some American multinationals operating in the country had always supported the MPLA. But when the corporations expressed their views to the American government, they were treated as the enemy.
And freedom fighters, lovers of freedom and democracy, from Afghanistan to Nicaragua.
The freedom fighters he is talking about are called the Contras.
Well, they wouldn't exist without the CIA.
A convoy of vehicles is pushing along the coast to Al-Qaila, the next town still under pro-Gaddafi control. The British Defence Ministry has released these pictures which show a Tornado jet fighter targeting and destroying pro-Gaddafi vehicles
They produced
thought to be
convincing
carrying
evidence
rocket
of
launchers.
Soviet bases in Nicaragua.
I used to laugh and say, look at that Soviet-style baseball diamond over there, you know. This is almost foolish, really, to talk about this. First of all, they're not Soviet military bases. That's the whole point. The second is that a barracks is a barracks. An obstacle course is an obstacle.
Gaddafi has crossed a line, targeting civilians from the air. Today, that only seemed to enrage the rebels more. Gaddafi, you coward, meet us in the battlefield. These men are shouting as they stand in a bomb blast crater.
We had set ourselves well above and beyond the law, beyond the Congress, beyond the Constitution.
To be more precise, according to Al Jazeera and to BBC, on the 22nd of February, Libyan government has inflicted airstrikes on Benghazi, the biggest city in the country. And according to Russia's military, they have not registered any of those airstrikes. According to them, the pictures show that nothing of that sort has been carried out. On the footage that we've been getting from the country, we may be able to notice that there are absolutely no signs of any destruction inflicted by attacks from air or by Libyan Air Force in those pictures. So at this point...
Basically, and to put it very crudely, you can publish any old crap you like, and it will get newspaper room.
Despite the CIA's best efforts, the armies they supported never stood much of a chance. The world's largest news agencies. Its offices around the globe provide many papers with their only source of news from some parts of the world. Many papers actually rely on the same person for their information, the Reuters correspondent.
So he came up with another story, which he in fact kept going for weeks, and it was a good story in terms of the CIA's propaganda interests. He had some Cuban soldiers raping some young Angolan girl and was convicted, and then he had them executed by a firing squad of the women who had supposedly been violated with photographs. There had never been a rape. There had never been the military action. The Cubans had never been captured.
Gaddafi soldiers killed in the fight for Ajdabiya, and in the pockets of their uniforms, Viagra and condoms, weapons of war.
And you ascertained from that that's why, because they were going to rape?
Yeah, sure. Here in the Mohammed M. Garif Hospital, Dr. Solomon Rafadi has treated 2 women in the past week who said they had been raped.
The Gaddafi troops had said, those of your women who celebrate loudly, we will come and we will rape them.
Are returning to find their homes in ruins, but their city now safe and free.
Are not going to be too skeptical of Cuban rapist story. It sort of fits the general Western line and what the West wants to read about Cuba and whatnot. The truth is, all of the information we were getting was that the Cubans were handling themselves brilliantly.
So the American government has poured money into supporting the opponents of the Nicaraguan regime.
And the powerful interests that may be driving them from outside of the Middle East. Because I think this ties into a more global pattern where we have to understand the major geopolitical long-term planning emanating from such organizations as the Council on Foreign Relations, the Trilateral Commission, and the Bilderberg Group, who have for decades
received money themselves to buy arms. That was all handled for them by the CIA, and there's no way out of saying that the Contra Force is essentially and almost entirely a creation of the United States government. The Contras are agents of the
pro-democracy forces here, with little indication that the West was willing to act just 24 hours ago. Some were predicting that this stronghold would fall.
And trying to transition, as I was saying before, to a more liberal, chaotic, and more controllable Western-style democracy that would serve their interests. So I think we have to be very careful about the various readings that we make of this. It's very important that the government on the other side, whether it be in Egypt, whether it be in Libya, whether it be in Bahrain or in Tunisia, should understand the powerful social forces they are up against, the psychological warfare tactics that are being used, and they should not allow themselves, either side, to be used by interests and objectives which are completely outside the interest of the Libyans or the Egyptians or the Tunisians or the Iraqis or just about any country that is having such turmoil in the Middle East.
ما في ديمقراطية هناك، بل هناك دكتاتورية لا تختلف أبدا عن دكتاتورية هتلر أو نابليون أو موسوليني أو جنكيز خان أو اسكندر إلى آخر الطغاة. بأمر رئاسي يقال هكذا في عهد ريغن المجنون، يقال بأمر رئاسي أصدر الرئيس الأمريكي ريغن أمر رئاسي بالحرب على ليبيا مثلا، أمر رئاسي بمحاصرة ليبيا، أمر رئاسي بمقاطعة ليبيا، أمر رئاسي بعمل كذا كذا. هذه ليست دكتاتورية، هذه ديمقراطية. الآن
the United States setting up a tradition of supporting dictatorships, brutal ones, forming and training their brutal police and death squads, while the Soviet Union, which has had periods of pretty harsh policies towards its own people, is winding up the champion of real freedom throughout the world. If you have a dictator and you want some help getting rid of him, you cannot go to the United States, you can go to the Soviet Union.
Disinformation.
The basic theme. Disinformation.
The basic theme. Disinformation. Disinformation.
We do not forget.
Disinformation.